Today we're going to be interviewing Don Emerson, one of our authors of the book The Morning After Darkness, My Adoption Story. So thank you for joining us. We're here today with Don Emerson. Don, why don't you go ahead and give us a small summary of your book that you have published?
It's a book about a son who was adopted, and he discovers he was adopted on his father's deathbed, and discovers a lot about his parents' past he did not know, and his own past.
Writing such an entailed story like this requires quite a bit of time, motivation. What kept you going?
You know, that's a difficult question to answer. I wanted to tell this story, and I wanted basically to leave it for my son and daughter.
So when you're writing a story like this, a lot of authors find that it's a piece of themselves that they're putting into it. Do you see yourself reflected in the characters and in the story?
A lot of it, yes. And to some extent, that came as a bit of a shock and a bit of a surprise.
Really?
And when my wife read pieces of the manuscript, her first comment was, "This sounds familiar."
And I think that's going to appeal also to other readers who have experienced their part in the adoption triad as well. What do you hope that your readers will get out of it?
I would hope people would see that the adoption process is both an extremely happy experience, and also many people may not agree with me, but I think in many respects it's a very painful experience. And for the adopted child, they experience a loss which they can't explain. Large numbers of children grow up with a feeling of rejection. That affects most of their life.
You know, when dealing with these kind of personal topics and issues, the topic of faith comes up a lot. And I know that faith is very important to you, but you don't talk about it explicitly in the novel. Would you share with us a little bit about your own faith walk as you've gone through this?
Yeah, I don't mind doing that, and it is important to me. Yeah. I do not recall a time in my life when I was not a believer. I don't recall that. Mm-hmm. But through life, I have found my faith deepened by particular experiences. When I was teaching on the college level, I was involved in an auto accident, and it was a very serious accident. My passenger and I walked away from that accident.
Wow. No
scratches, no bruises. Neither of us ever had any soreness.
Wow. That's amazing.
And that was a miracle.
Yeah, for sure.
When our son was 5, he suffered a very serious head injury. And Rod was in a coma for 8 hours.
Wow.
The pediatrician had called me and said, 2 weeks after he leaves the hospital, I want him in my office. So we went in 2 weeks later, and he stripped into his shorts and he ran him through test after test after test. He looked at us and he said, "I have only one statement. Somebody looked after him."
Nice.
You know clearly who was responsible.
Sure.
You weren't responsible. The doctors weren't responsible. Only God could do that.
Well, I hate to bring our conversation to a close, but before we end, Do you have any advice for aspiring authors?
Well, I think one has to make two decisions.
Okay.
Do I want to try to use an agent, or do I want to self-publish?
This is true.
I had been the agent routine with a magazine article. It was not exactly pleasant. Well, I was going to send it to Thomas Nelson, and they advised me to send it to Westabo, which is their self-publishing arm. That was such a painful experience dealing with that agent.
I've heard that before.
And after thinking about that for 2 or 3 days, I contacted.
Very good.
So.
Well, I appreciate your time. Again, we're here with Don Emerson, and his book that he's published is The Morning After Darkness, My Adoption Story. It's available on Amazon.com or at McKinneyPublishing.com. Thank you for joining us, and I appreciate your time, Don.
Well, thank you very much.